My daughter called the smell of my jollof rice too strong for her proper English Christmas. Then, in front of her English in-laws, she threw the entire platter I lovingly cooked into the rubbish bin. She thought she was just throwing away food. She didn't realize she was also throwing away the £10,000 cheque for her house deposit that I had in my purse, and I was about to make the cost of her cultural shame crystal clear. Before we begin, thank you for joining me in my kitchen today. If you believe that the food of our mothers is the music of our souls, and that our heritage is a crown we should wear with pride, then you have found your people. It warms my spirit to see our community gathered here, so please, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Now, let me tell you the story of how my daughter decided my love was not fit for her table, and how I taught her the true cost of a proper Christmas. My name is Yemisi Adebayo, and on Christmas Eve my small second-floor flat in Peckham is the center of the universe. The world outside may be a symphony of London grey, damp pavements, slate-colored skies, the distant rumble of the overground, but inside these four walls, it is Lagos in December. The air is thick and alive, a tapestry woven from the scents of thyme, of ginger, of Scotch bonnet peppers threatening to bloom into glorious, searing heat. This is the scent of my love. It is the scent of my memory. It is the scent of jollof rice. At 65, my hands, though gnarled with the first signs of arthritis, move with the steady, certain rhythm of a lifetime of practice. They know the precise moment to bloom the onions, the exact second the tomato puree has caramelized to a deep, sweet umber. For 40 years as a nurse in the NHS, these hands brought comfort and healing to strangers. They changed dressings, administered medications, and held the hands of the dying. They were good, useful hands. But in my retirement they do the work they were truly born for. They cook. They tell the stories of my Yoruba ancestors, stories that cannot be spoken but can only be tasted. Today the story is for my daughter Tenny, my London-born girl, my pride and my heartache. Tomorrow is Christmas Day, and as is our tradition, I will bring the jollof to her house. It is the centerpiece, the sun around which all other dishes must orbit. It is more than food. It is a sacrament. It is the edible, steaming proof that though we are in this cold country, we are not of it. We are Adebayo. We are Nigerian. The process is a ritual, a meditation. I begin by washing the rice, long-grain basmati, pouring it into a large bowl and covering it with cold water. I swirl the grains with my fingers, watching the water turn milky with starch. I drain and repeat again and again until the water runs clear. A baptism for the grains, my mother used to say. It is a lesson in patience. You cannot rush the foundation. As I work, I remember Tenny as a little girl, standing on a stool beside me, her small hands trying to mimic mine, giggling as the starchy water splashed her face. She loved this part. She loved the feel of the rice, the magic of its transformation. Next, the base, the obe ata, the soul of the stew. Into the blender go the plum tomatoes, the red bell peppers, a whole white onion, and the Scotch bonnets. I pause, holding a fiery pepper in my hand. Tenny's partner, James, is English. His palate is delicate. I should only use one. But my grandmother's voice whispers in my ear, a life without spice is a life not fully lived. I add two. The blender roars to life, creating a vortex of vibrant, furious red. This is the lifeblood of the dish. As the mixture simmers in a deep pot, filling my small kitchen with its fragrant soul, my thoughts are on Tenny. At 35, she is a success by every English metric. She works in corporate marketing, a world of sharp suits and sharper accents I can barely understand. She is saving for a house with James, a nice, quiet boy who works in finance and always looks slightly terrified of my cooking, even as he politely compliments it. They live in a suburb I can never remember the name of, a place where all the houses look the same and the air has no smell at all. Tenny is a good daughter, but she is conflicted. She has spent her life sanding down the vibrant, colorful edges of her heritage to fit into the smooth, beige world of her English peers. Her accent is perfectly polished, a product of good schools and a conscious effort to erase the lilt of her parents. Her wardrobe is a study in muted tones, gray, navy, cream. She speaks of our culture with a kind of affectionate anthropological distance, as if she is describing a fascinating but primitive tribe she once read about. I remember when she was a teenager, coming home from school in tears because a girl had called her lunch of rice and stew stinky. That day she threw the Tupperware container in the bin and asked for sandwiches from then on. A piece of her heart was thrown away that day, I think. But I know that this jollof, this pot of love, is a bridge between her two worlds. It is the taste of her childhood, the food she still, in quiet moments, craves above all others. It is the one piece of her Nigerian self she has not yet managed to sand away. As the rice steams, each grain absorbing the rich, spicy stew, my eyes drift to the mantelpiece. Tucked into the frame of a photograph of my late husband, Kola, is a Christmas card. Inside it is a cheque. It is for £10,000. The number still makes my hand tremble when I write it. It is the culmination of a lifetime of 12-hour shifts, of taking on extra night duties when Tenny needed new school shoes or a trip with the class. It is the memory of my own aching feet, of the bone-deep weariness that comes from a life spent on your feet caring for others. It is the holidays I didn't take, the small luxuries I denied myself. It is my life's work, distilled into a single piece of paper. It is for Tenny and James for their house deposit. It is the key that will unlock the door to the life she has worked so hard to build, the proper English life she so desperately wants. I look at it and my heart swells with a mother's pride. This cheque is my ultimate act of love, the tangible proof of my sacrifice. The rice is ready. The final crucial step is the party bottom, the slightly burnt, smoky layer at the base of the pot that is the mark of a truly great jollof. I turn up the heat for the last few minutes, listening for the subtle crackle, smelling for that hint of caramelization. It is perfect. Before I pack the food for the journey tomorrow, I take the card from the mantelpiece. My final, most important ingredient. I place it deep within my handbag, ready for the perfect moment. I lift the lid on the pot, and a cloud of fragrant steam billows out, a ghost of home. Each grain is separate, perfect, glowing with a deep, orange-red fire. It is magnificent. It is my heart in a pot. Tomorrow I will give my daughter the two greatest gifts I possess, the taste of her heritage and the key to her future. I will place my love on her table in two forms. I am so full of joy, so full of a mother's simple, hopeful love. I have no idea that by the end of the next day one of those gifts will be in a rubbish bin, and the other will be in pieces. The journey from my flat in Peckham to Tenny's house in Surrey is a journey between worlds. I leave the vibrant, chaotic, multicultural pulse of my neighborhood, the air thick with the promise of 100 different cuisines, the streets a river of languages and colors, and travel into the quiet, orderly, and profoundly beige heart of suburban England. The train glides past identical houses with identical, neatly trimmed hedges. It is a world of muted colors and muted emotions, a place where the lawns are perfect and the passions are kept safely behind closed doors. I arrive at their house, a modern new build with a gray door and a gravel driveway, carrying my precious cargo. The platter of jollof rice is a magnificent, steaming mountain, wrapped in layers of foil and towels to keep it warm. It is heavy in my arms, a solid, tangible weight of love. In my handbag, the Christmas card with the cheque inside feels like a secret, a joyful promise waiting to be revealed. I ring the bell, my heart full of anticipation for the hugs of my grandchildren, the warmth of a family Christmas. Tenny opens the door. She looks beautiful, of course, in a cream-colored cashmere jumper that probably cost more than my monthly pension. Her smile, however, is as tight and thin as a stretched rubber band. It is a smile designed for a corporate meeting, not for her mother on Christmas Day. "Mom," she says, her voice bright but brittle. "You made it. Merry Christmas." She gives me a quick air-light kiss on the cheek that smells of expensive perfume and leaves no warmth. "Merry Christmas, my darling," I say, beaming, trying to push past the chill of her welcome. "I have brought the jollof." I hold the heavy platter up as an offering. As I step into the house, her smile falters. Her nose wrinkles just for a second, but I see it. It is a small, involuntary gesture of distaste. "Goodness," she says, taking a small step back as if from an assault. "That does have a rather strong smell, doesn't it?" The words are a small, cold pinprick to my heart. A strong smell. She is speaking of the scent of her childhood, the scent of her ancestors, as if it were an unpleasant odor to be tolerated, an unwelcome immigrant in her clean English house. "It is the smell of a proper feast," I say, my own smile becoming a little more fixed, a little more forced. James appears, a good, kind boy who always seems slightly overwhelmed by the world and especially by his wife. "Yemisi, welcome," he says, giving me a warmer, more genuine hug. He gestures towards the platter. "That smells incredible." Tenny already told the kids we're trying a traditional English dinner this year, so they've been a bit worried. Don't encourage her, James, Tenny says with a light tinkling laugh that doesn't reach her eyes. It is a sound designed to make her comment seem like a joke, but the steel underneath is unmistakable. You'll have the whole house smelling like a Lagos market. I follow her into the kitchen, a vast sterile space of white countertops and stainless steel. Looks like a laboratory, a place for precise measurements, not for the joyful, messy art of cooking. There are no family photos on the fridge, no colorful tea towels, no sign of life. The air in here smells of nothing at all, except for a faint pine-scented cleaning product. Just pop it on the counter over there, Mum, Tenny says, gesturing to a small, isolated corner of the workspace, far from the main island where she is arranging pale, unseasoned roast potatoes around a turkey that is a strange, anemic shade of beige. Away from the main prep area, I place my magnificent, vibrant, soul-filled platter of jollof rice on the designated side counter. It looks like a king in exile banished from the royal court. It is the first time in my daughter's life that my jollof has not been given the place of honor in the center of the table. Later, James's parents, Margaret and David, arrive. They are nice, quiet English people, polite and reserved. They compliment the minimalist Christmas decorations, the scentless pine-scented candles. They speak in low, hushed tones about the traffic and the weather. The house is filled with a strained, formal quietness, a stark contrast to the boisterous, joyful chaos of a Nigerian Christmas I remember from my own childhood. My grandchildren, Chloe and Leo, are my only comfort. They are a beautiful, chaotic mix of their two worlds. They run to me, their faces bright with the pure, uncomplicated joy of Christmas. Grandma! Chloe cries, burying her face in my skirt. You did bring the special rice. Mummy said we were having a boring English Christmas this year. Chloe, that's rude, Tenny snaps, her voice sharp with embarrassment. She swoops in and steers the children away from me towards their other grandparents. Go and show Granddad and Grandma your new toys. And we do not use the word boring, but I watch them go, my heart aching. A boring English Christmas. The child had spoken a simple, profound truth. I look at the pale, unseasoned food being arranged on the table. I look at my jollof sitting alone on the side counter, a vibrant, passionate outcast in this cold, beige world. And I feel a deep, sorrowful chill. My daughter is not just hosting a Christmas dinner. She is making a statement. She is choosing a side. And it is not mine. The Christmas dinner was a performance of Englishness. We sat at the long formal dining table, which was laid with a crisp white tablecloth and an arsenal of silverware I did not know how to use. The conversation was polite, muted, and centered around the weather, the traffic on the M25, and the merits of different types of garden mulch. James's parents, Margaret and David, were perfectly pleasant, but their quiet, reserved nature created an atmosphere of strained formality. It was not a meal. It was a social obligation, a carefully constructed tableau of middle-class English life. The food was exactly as it looked, bland, beige and joyless. The turkey was dry, the potatoes were underseasoned, the Brussels sprouts were a watery, bitter trial. I ate what I could, a polite smile fixed on my face, my heart a cold, heavy stone in my chest. I watched as Tenny played the perfect hostess, her accent becoming even more clipped and polished, her laughter light and brittle. She was performing for her in-laws, for her husband, for the life she so desperately wanted to be hers. My own magnificent flavor-filled jollof rice sat on the side counter in the kitchen, a silent, vibrant reproach to the pale, lifeless meal on our plates. The only sparks of life at the table were my grandchildren. They picked at their turkey, their faces a mask of childish disappointment. Finally, my grandson Leo, his voice piping and clear in the quiet room, could bear it no longer. Mummy, he asked, his fork pushing a pale potato around his plate. Can we have some of Grandma's special rice now, please? The turkey is a bit dry. Yes. Chloe chimed in, her eyes lighting up with a sudden, desperate hope. The yummy orange rice. Please. It's Christmas. The table fell silent. All eyes turned to Tenny. I saw a flicker of something in her face. A brief, hot flash of shame, of anger, of a deep, complicated defensiveness. She shot a quick, panicked glance at me, then at James's parents, who were watching with polite, neutral expressions that revealed nothing. The perfect facade of her proper English Christmas had been cracked by the honest, simple desire of a child. Tenny composed herself, her face arranging itself into a mask of bright, brittle cheerfulness. She gave a small, tinkling laugh, a sound as artificial as the pine-scented candle on the sideboard. "Oh no, darlings," she said, her voice a high, sweet, and utterly false coo. "Not today. We're having a proper English Christmas today. Grandma's rice is for another time. A proper English Christmas." The words were a slap in the face. She had said it. She had drawn the line in the sand not just for herself but for my grandchildren, her children. She was teaching them that my food, my culture, their heritage was not proper. It was something other, something to be eaten at another time, not on a special occasion. It was not worthy of the main event. James said nothing. He just stared down at his plate, a faint flush creeping up his neck. His silence was a betrayal all its own, a quiet act of cowardice that I felt as keenly as his wife's cruelty. His parents said nothing, their polite smiles never wavering. And in their silence, I felt a profound sense of isolation, of being the lone, exotic representative of a world that had no place at this table. But the final, unforgivable act was yet to come. After the main course was cleared away, Tenny stood up, clapping her hands together with that same false brightness. "Right," she announced. "Time to make some room for the Christmas pudding." She walked into the kitchen, her movements sharp and jerky. I saw her glance at the platter of jollof, then at her in-laws through the doorway, her jaw tight. It was a symbol of everything she was trying to control, a vibrant, unruly guest at her perfectly curated, sterile party. Her desire to impress, to assimilate, had curdled into a kind of panic. She went directly to the side counter where my jollof rice sat, untouched, a vibrant, beautiful testament to a love that had been rejected. I thought she was going to cover it, to put it in the fridge for later. Instead, she picked up the entire heavy platter. "Tenny, wait," James started, his voice a low, hesitant plea, but she cut him off with a look so sharp and cold it silenced him instantly. She walked over to the rubbish bin, the kind with a foot pedal, sleek and stainless steel. She stepped on the pedal, the lid flipping open with a sharp plastic clap. And then, in front of everyone, in an act of such breathtaking, casual cruelty that it seemed to happen in slow motion, she tilted the platter. The magnificent, steaming mountain of my jollof rice, my pot full of love, my great-grandmother's legacy, slid in a great fragrant heap into the bin, landing with a soft, final thud on top of a pile of turkey bones and potato peelings. She scraped the last few grains of rice from the platter into the bin with a fork, the sound a sharp metallic scratching that echoed in the dead, shocked silence of the room. "There," she said, turning back to the room with a triumphant smile, as if she had just completed a difficult but necessary chore. "All clean. Now who wants pudding?" No one spoke. The air was thick with a horror so profound it was a physical presence. My grandchildren stared at their mother, their eyes wide with a confusion that would, in time, curdle into a learned shame. James's parents looked deeply, profoundly uncomfortable, their polite masks finally slipping. But I did not see them. I saw only the bin. I saw my love, my heritage, my very identity, lying discarded amongst the scraps and the rubbish. She had not just thrown away food. She had thrown me away. She had thrown away her ancestors. She had thrown away her children's birthright. All for the sake of a proper English Christmas. In that moment, the patience that had been the cornerstone of my life, the deep, abiding well of a mother's love, finally, irrevocably ran dry. It was replaced by something cold, something hard, something as clear and as sharp as a shard of broken glass. The performance was over. The world seemed to slow down. The ticking of the grandfather clock in Tenny's hallway was unnaturally loud, each tick a hammer blow against the thick, shocked silence in the room. No one moved. No one spoke. They were all frozen, trapped in the amber of Tenny's monstrous act. I did not shout. I did not weep. The part of me that was capable of such hot, immediate emotions had been flash-frozen, turned to ice. The years of swallowing small slights, of ignoring passive-aggressive comments, of patiently hoping my daughter would find her way back to her own heritage, it all culminated in this single clarifying moment of absolute betrayal. The jollof in the bin was not just rice. It was every time she had corrected my accent. It was every time she had called my clothes ethnic. It was every time she had treated my stories as quaint, embarrassing fables. It was the sum total of her shame, and she had just served it to me as the final course of our Christmas dinner. A profound, chilling calm settled over me. It was the calm of a battlefield after the decisive, bloody battle has been fought and lost. The love I had for my daughter, a fierce, unconditional, lifelong fire, was not extinguished. It was something far worse. It was still there, but it was now encased in a thick, unbreakable shell of ice. I placed my knife and fork neatly together on my plate. I folded my paper napkin and placed it beside them. My movements were slow, deliberate, precise. I was a nurse again, performing a sterile, necessary procedure on a patient whose heart had already stopped beating. "Excuse me," I said, my voice quiet, even, and utterly devoid of emotion. It was a stranger's voice. It cut through the silence, making everyone at the table flinch. I pushed my chair back, the sound a loud, ugly scrape on the polished wooden floor. I stood up. I did not look at Tenny. I did not look at my son-in-law or his parents. I did not look at my grandchildren, whose wide, confused eyes were fixed on me. To look at them would be to break, and I would not give my daughter the satisfaction of my tears. I turned and walked out of the dining room. My steps were steady. My back was straight. I walked through the cold, minimalist living room, a space as devoid of warmth and personality as my daughter's heart now seemed to be. I passed a collection of framed photos on a sterile white shelf. Tenny and James at their wedding. The children on a beach. There were no photos of me. I realized in that moment that I had been erased from her life long before she had thrown my rice in the bin. I walked to the small table in the hallway where I had left my handbag when I arrived. I picked up the bag. It felt light, insignificant. I opened it. Inside, nestled amongst my purse and my reading glasses, was the Christmas card. The card that held the check. The card that held my life savings, my sacrifice, my final grand gesture of a mother's love. I took the card out. The cheerful, glittery snowman on the front seemed to mock me with its false joy. I held it in my hand, the crisp edges of the envelope a sharp, grounding reality in a world that had just dissolved into a nightmare. I stood there for a long moment, the card in my hand, the muffled, awkward sounds of someone attempting to restart a conversation drifting from the dining room. James probably. Trying to smooth things over. Trying to pretend it hadn't happened. Trying to smooth over the gaping, bleeding wound that had just been torn open in the fabric of our family. But it had happened. And it could not be smoothed over. Could not be undone. The jollof was in the bin. The love was in the ice. I turned, the card still in my hand, and began the long, silent walk back to the dining room. I was no longer a guest. I was no longer a mother. I was a messenger. And I was about to deliver a final, devastating Christmas message of my own. I walked back into the dining room and stood at the head of the table, directly opposite my daughter. The awkward, forced conversation about the weather died in their throats. All eyes were on me. The room was silent once more, but this was a different kind of silence. It was a tense, expectant silence, the kind that precedes a verdict. Tenny looked at me, her expression a mixture of defiance and a dawning, flickering fear. She did not know what was coming, but she knew that the quiet, patient, accommodating mother she had known her entire life was gone. In my place stood a woman she did not recognize, a woman made of ice and iron. I held up the Christmas card, the one with the cheerful, glittery snowman. My hand was perfectly steady. "Tenny," I said. My voice was not loud, but it carried the weight of my 65 years, the weight of my ancestors, the weight of a love that had just been thrown in the bin. It was a voice she had never heard before, and it made her flinch. "This was for you," I continued, my eyes locked on hers, refusing to let her look away. "For your house deposit. For the proper life you want so much." I opened the card slowly, deliberately. I pulled out the check. I held it up between my thumb and forefinger so that everyone at the table could see it. Tenny's eyes, so sharp and trained in the world of corporate marketing, immediately found the number written in neat black ink. £10,000. Her breath caught in her throat, a small, sharp gasp of disbelief and dawning, greedy hope. She thought even now that this was a peace offering, that I was about to give her a gift to smooth things over, to buy back her affection. The sheer, breathtaking arrogance of it fueled the cold fire in my heart. "This is the fruit of my love and my sacrifice," I said, my voice as cold and as clear as the winter air outside. 40 years of 12-hour shifts. 40 years of coming home with aching feet and a sore back. 40 years of going without, of mending my own clothes, of saving every spare penny. It is the same love and the same sacrifice that I put into the jollof rice you just scraped into the rubbish bin. I let the words hang in the air for a moment, letting their full, devastating weight settle upon her. I watched her face as the connection was finally, irrevocably made. The color drained from her cheeks. Her mouth fell slightly open. The triumphant, defiant look in her eyes was replaced by a look of pure, dawning horror. He understood. He finally understood. And then, with a calm, methodical precision that felt both ancient and new, I brought my other hand up. I held the cheque taut between my two hands, and I ripped it in half. The sound was a short, sharp, violent tear, a sound that seemed to cut through the very soul of the room. It was the sound of a bond breaking. It was the sound of a future being cancelled. It was the sound of a mother's heart finally, irrevocably saying, "No more." I was not finished. I took the two halves and placed them together, the two halves of my daughter's name now misaligned. And I ripped them again. The 4 perfect blue and white squares of the cheque, the remnants of my life savings, the ghost of a down payment on a house, fluttered from my fingers. They drifted down and landed softly on the pristine white tablecloth, coming to rest in a small, neat pile next to a silver gravy boat. They looked like confetti. The sad, pathetic confetti of a celebration that had just died. I looked at my daughter one last time. I saw not the confident, ambitious woman she pretended to be, but a small, frightened girl. A girl who had just made a terrible, terrible mistake. A mistake that could never be undone. I did not need to say another word. The torn cheque on the table said everything. It said, "You have rejected my love, so I am rejecting your future." It said, "You have deemed my heritage to be worthless, so I am deeming my sacrifice to be null and void." It said, "We are finished." The 4 small blue and white squares of paper on the table held a power far greater than their monetary value. They were a verdict. A final, irrevocable judgment. Tenny stared at them, her face a mask of chalky, horrified disbelief. Her mind, so quick and sharp in her corporate world, was slowly, painfully processing the full, catastrophic magnitude of what had just happened. She had not just lost a gift. She had lost a future. The deposit on the house, the key to the proper life she had so desperately craved, was lying in pieces on the table, a casualty of her own cultural shame. James, her quiet, passive partner, looked from the torn cheque to Tenny's face, a look of dawning, helpless horror on his own. His parents stared down at their dessert plates, their faces flushed with a deep, English embarrassment, wishing themselves anywhere but here. My grandchildren, Chloe and Leo, just looked confused, their young minds unable to grasp the adult tragedy that had just unfolded, knowing only that their happy Christmas day had turned into something cold and sad and broken. I did not wait for the tears, for the accusations, for the inevitable, pathetic pleas for forgiveness. My part in this performance was over. I had delivered my final line. With a quiet, unshakable dignity that I had not felt in years, I turned away from the table. I walked to the hallway, retrieved my coat and my handbag. I did not say goodbye to my grandchildren. To do so would have broken the icy resolve that was holding me together, and I would not give my daughter the satisfaction of seeing me weep. I walked to the front door, my footsteps the only sound in the dead, silent house. As I opened it, I heard a faint, choked sound behind me. "Yemisi." It was James, his voice a pathetic, useless plea. But it was cut off. By Tenny, perhaps, or by his own spinelessness. It didn't matter. No one stopped me. That silence, that final, cowardly silence, was the only goodbye I needed. A blast of cold, clean winter air washed over me. Felt like a baptism. I stepped out into the quiet, suburban night, and I closed the gray door softly behind me. The long journey back to Peckham on the train was a blur. I stared out the window at the dark, fleeting images of the English countryside, but I did not see them. I saw the look on my daughter's face. I saw the vibrant, beautiful platter of my jollof rice sliding into the bin. I saw the 4 pieces of a cheque that represented a lifetime of a mother's love. I did not feel triumphant. I did not feel a sense of victory. I felt only a profound, hollow sadness. A grief for a daughter I had lost, not to death, but to a quiet, insidious cultural war she had been fighting within herself her entire life. A war in which she had just sacrificed her own mother as a casualty. When I arrived back at my small, warm flat, the lingering, fragrant scent of the jollof I had cooked that morning greeted me like an old friend. It was the scent of my home, my heritage, my identity. An identity I had refused to allow my daughter to throw in the bin. I lost a daughter that day, and I lost £10,000. But as I sat in the quiet of my own home, surrounded by the things that truly mattered, the memories of my husband, the stories of my ancestors, the unshakable truth of who I was, I knew that I had reclaimed something far more valuable. My dignity. My self-respect. Tenny was left with the cold, proper English Christmas she had so desperately wanted. A Christmas of dry turkey, of strained silences, of a gaping £10,000 hole in her future. She had made her choice. She had chosen a life of beige conformity over a heritage of vibrant flavor. She had chosen shame over love. And she would be paying the price for that choice for a very, very long time.